Sports presents Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
Another episode of Benning Bites. Fantastic show yesterday with Ravi. We covered a lot, right? We had a little NHL, a little NBA, a little culture building, some fantastic discussions with Iowa and Wisconsin as we talked to Doctorman and Ben Wargel. And, I asked Ravi the question. I said, hey, would you rather have your what ails you narrowed down to some finite point so you know what you're not accomplishing, or were you frustrated that it's been narrowed down to that finite point and you're still not accomplishing what you want, right? For Iowa, right? It was explosive plays on offense and quarterback play. And, for Nebraska, remember you heard Coach Rule talk a ton about what gets you to one-score games and being meticulous and paying attention to detail the whole time so it doesn't come down to that. But if it does, that it becomes muscle memory and habit because you know what it's like to be stressed. And it just got me thinking, with all the talk of these one-score games, and there was a point where in the media it was cool, right? Oh, man, all these one-score games. But then the alumni or the former player and the coach in me said, well, if it's the same thing all the time, that's a pretty big issue if you can't address it, right? Because, again, if you've narrowed it down to what you think ails you and you still can't fix it, I don't know if I would be encouraged by that. I think I would be more frustrated. And for a while in the last 15 years, it was multiple things that ailed Nebraska, right? It was style of play, or couldn't get turnovers, or offensive line play, or tackling, or whatever, and you couldn't quite pinpoint it. But what I think we didn't pay enough attention to is over the last couple of years, while we kept saying, gosh, Nebraska keeps inventing new ways to lose. Because that was the thing, right? Nebraska's finding new ways to lose. That's not a good thing if you're using it in conjunction with losing one-score games. Because if you think you're that close, but it's inventing new ways to lose and you're still within one-score games, you're not that close. Does that make sense, right? So I think we duped ourselves the last 2 years, I think, where we would say, oh, man, we're this close. But it was always something different that yielded the we're close results. So were we really that close? Doesn't seem like it, right? It just doesn't seem like it. We went from talent to execution to expecting to lose to, gosh, if we just would have had a key player here or there, why aren't some of our good players playing more? Why are they always hurt? It seemed like it was like a multitude of things. So how close were we? Well, the cool thing is that's going to kind of come to fruition here shortly with trying to cover all your bases. Because what have we talked about all spring, all offseason with Coach Rule? Doing the little things right. Talking about all facets of the game. And here's the new dirty C word. It's not culture. It's not chemistry. It's complementary. He's said this a multitude of times. He's even gone as far as to explain what it looks like and what it means. Well, we talk about complementary. We talk about complementary football on all sides, but like what are we really talking about? Right? Like that's my I can hear his voice in my sleep because, as you guys know, I just enjoy talking to him. And he's on to something, right? The more you talk about something as finite as it is and can't move off of it, it's not that finite. Because you wouldn't have to keep bringing it up if it was something that was just going to go away. If you're just talking about finances in your relationship, then finances are an issue. It's not if we could just get over this part, then it doesn't work like that, right? Because if it keeps coming up, you can't afford to minimize it. If we could, I gave Ravi the analogy of caloric intake, right? Getting to, I just made up a number, it's 2,100 calories. And he did I thought that if you didn't hear it, go back and listen to Coffee and Cream where he talked about, okay, it depends on how long that one singular finite thing has become an issue. If it's still an issue after 4 months, then I'm obviously not addressing what needs to be done. Now, it's cool that I've capped it to that, but listen, if my insulin is spiking and I have to go back and get something that changes my plan and I have to play catch up, that's a problem, right? So the analogy is I could set out 2,100 calories, and let's say my insulin is bad and so I have to play makeup and I need 6 lollipops or a thing of Jolly Ranchers or whatever it is that gets me sustainable in that. So I didn't eat, but then I have to go play makeup later. It's tougher for me to overcome. And the analogy is just got to take better care of the football in the fourth quarter. Well, how about you don't give it away earlier, right? How about you convert a few more third downs? Or how about you go a plus 8-9 yards in net punting versus returning, and it doesn't come down to we need the ball at this critical juncture with this kind of field position. Because if you win field position and special teams throughout the course of the game, it's not as magnified in crunch time. So which of those little finite things is the problem in those one-score games? It always seemed like it was something different. So are you really that close? It would be easy. We hear this in basketball all the time. Well, it's a make-or-miss league. Well, they just need to shoot better. Well, who doesn't, right? You always want the biscuit to go in the basket, but what can you do in the meantime? What's portable if you're not shooting it well? Which is why I say take a look at the little things in the spring game. I call it the tackling Bermuda Triangle, inside, outside, point of attack. You want more takeaways? Get more guys in position. You want more sacks? Earn the right to bring pressure by being better on first and second down. If you want to run the ball better, be less predictable in running situations. Sometimes when we bottom line things, we don't talk enough about how we got here. Like, what's the root cause? Isn't that the whole key to life? Like, we always want to talk about preventative measures. You'd rather be proactive than reactionary, right? Sports is no different. If you have a singular thing that you'd like to work on, 90% of the time, it's not that singular. So don't convince yourself just because you think you've got it narrowed down, it's still about the process. You've got to be able to have good command of the process to alleviate the variables down the road. It's not surefire. It's not 100% accurate, but you give yourself a better chance to have success. If you don't like, oh man, if the net punting return yards, well, sometimes you got to punt the ball better, right? If you punt the ball better and it's less advantageous, maybe you've got to do a little bit more max protecting to give yourself a chance at a better return later on. Or maybe situationally, you can't get to 15 yards depth between your holder and your snapper because you're pinned deep, even though you haven't returned the ball very well because you got a 3 and out, where you can't get as many down the field, or you don't want to go spread punt with bullets. Maybe you have to go tight coverage or max protect or use big guys. That's advantageous to the return game, right? Like, those kinds of little things matter. So even though you narrow the scope, it doesn't lessen the process. Those two things go hand in hand. However you get us, make sure you're a part of what we do. Google, Apple, Spotify. We appreciate it. Give my man Ravi Lula a follow. He's at RALULLA. Or my man Andrew Rogers, Andrew Rogers TV. He will be back at some point. Not sure when. He'll be our correspondent for the draft. That'll be fun. It's because we're trying to be versatile. That's what we do, and we are here for you. That's another episode of Benning Bites.